So Brianna, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Good, good. Thank you for having me. Super excited to be here.
Yeah, so you are from Crazy Family Adventure, and you guys are road schoolers. And we got in contact with you, wanted to have you on because we are really excited to talk about this because it's something that we've looked into. It's kind of hard to get into with where we are right now, but it's something we really wanted to talk to somebody about because it's just to us and other people who aren't doing it, it's just a really cool thing to hear about and see, especially following you like you guys like on Instagram. And so we had you here today to kind of talk a little bit about what road schooling looks like, what your adventure looks like, and kind of the educational process that takes place. Because I think probably a lot of people don't understand how that might work and how you actually make the entire process work in general. So if you could introduce yourself and your family and a brief timeline and history of your road schooling adventures.
All right, sounds good. So yeah, and always super excited to talk about this topic because obviously we're passionate about it and we love it. So thank you for having me on and letting me talk about myself and our family. So yes, I'm Brianna from Crazy Family Adventure. My husband Craig, we're actually high school sweethearts. Started dating when we were 15, so we've been together a really long time. And then we have 4 kids: Carson, who is 13, and then Knox and Malia, who are twins that are 10, and then Knox, who is 8. And we have been on the road full time now for over 6.5 years. So we've been doing this for pretty much like their life. Like to them, it's hard for them to even remember, prior to this. So we were living like your typical like American dream. Like, okay, hey, we have the big house, like we have the big yard, like we have the swing set and the pool, and we have every toy that they sell at Toys R Us, we've got everything. And we kind of just started feeling like some things like we want more, like we want something different. Like we don't want to be like just working all week to then every weekend go to Target, Menards, and spend $100 just to go fix this beautiful house that we built and we love and it's amazing, but it's way too big and we don't need this much space. And like the kids are always just next to me. Like it's it's not like everyone's in
That's
like,
true.
always together, like moving in a little pod. So like we don't need all of this space. Granted, as they've gotten older, like a little bit more separation, but when they were little, like they're just always next to you. So decided like, okay, we want more, to do something. And what that was, we didn't necessarily know. We knew from a schooling perspective. My parents are actually retired school teachers. They both taught 7th grade for tons of years. And my mom especially kind of talked to me when my first was born, and she's like, so you're going to homeschool, right? I was like, what, Matt? Like, I wasn't homeschooled, and like, you're a retired school teacher. But I'm like, okay, like, I don't know, like, sure, like, I'm just trying to make sure my baby sleeps at night. Like, I'll think about that. But then kind of started doing some research, and she presented some things to me and kind of came across the whole, obviously I knew what homeschooling was, but came across all the different ways you could do it and came across unschooling and really, really liked that. That really resonated with kind of what I thought led from being attachment parents into homeschooling. Like unschooling was kind of just like a continuation of attachment parenting as the kids got older. So I was like, oh, okay, well, that sounds good. I think we'll do that. So then as the years went on, we had 4 kids within 4 years. So when our oldest got to be at the age where he had to go in kindergarten, it was like, are we actually doing this? Like, are we really not being normal and like putting him in school like everyone else? Are we really going to do this? And it was like, yeah, I think we're really going to do this. So once we kind of made that decision, it was like, well, now what? Like, we don't have anything per se holding us back. Yes, my husband had a job that, was local to where we were and everything. But other than that, like, it was like wide open. Like we could go and do what we wanted to do. We weren't on anyone else's schedule really, but our own. So it kind of started to go, all right, well, maybe we can downsize our house and just travel like a little bit more. So like have a lower mortgage and just maybe get an RV and just travel a little bit or just go overseas or something. And then we kind of started looking around and we're like, yeah, this RVing thing, we have 2 dogs. So with the RV, we can bring them with. Like, that sounds really cool. Maybe we should give that a try. So then we bought an RV because, why wouldn't you buy an RV when you have 4 kids, 6 and under? But so we bought an RV and we're like, hey, let's give this a try. So we went and took a trip down to Florida and got there, and I like called my sister like 5 days in. I'm like, all right, Megan, here's the plan. Cause we had been talking all along about maybe doing something together. We're gonna sell everything and travel full time in our RVs. She's like,
After one
oh, yeah.
weekend?
Yeah, over like 4 days being in the RV. It was like, that's it, we're sold. And this was because we went down to Florida in January coming from Wisconsin. So I know you guys understand that. It was
Oh,
like,
yes.
oh, wait a second.
We
We
do.
don't want
We told you we live in Ohio, but last year though we just moved here from Florida, so we know exactly what you're talking about.
Oh, okay. So you totally get it, but you went the other direction.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, so we were like, okay, that's it. We're sold. Let's do it. And then they had pets and they have kids too, and it was like, yes, this sounds amazing. Like, let's go for it. So then that kind of started the whole idea of just selling it all and getting in the RV, and that was well over 6 years ago. And here we are. And my sister and her family are actually parked next to us right now, and my parents are parked behind us. So my parents got in the bandwagon too, and they travel full time too. So here we are.
Wow.
So it's a family affair.
It is. And so many people ask, like, well, what does your family think about what you're doing? And I'm like, well, they love it. They're with us.
Have they been following you for 6 years? Your sister and your parents?
So my sister and I, like our families, we launched at the same time. So we started moving in to actually a local RV park where we spent about 5 months to kind of get used to the RVs, and our husbands were still working local jobs. And like I'd been a stay-at-home mom, but we were still doing that. And then so they've been on the road the same amount of time we have, but they've done their own thing. Like her husband worked in Yellowstone. They've gone and done like trips to Costa Rica and different things. So we kind of travel together, and then we go our own ways and come together and go our own ways. And then my parents, were kind of at first like, what are you guys talking about? What are you doing? And both me and my sister knew like they'd eventually come and join us, but they had never planned to RV. It was not anything they did. It was not in the retirement plan. But then once we did it, my mom actually went out and she's like, I bought a fifth wheel. I bought a truck. Your dad's not sure about this. I told him I will learn the whole thing. I will do it all. We're following you guys. We're going to meet you places. I'm like, all right, mom, cool. Well, now my dad loves it. And of course he's part of it and whatever. So about, I think 3 years ago is when they officially sold everything, got in the RV, and have been on the road full time as well. So they kind of bounce between us and my sister. And then if we're not going to be somewhere warm in the winter, they're like, see you guys. And they head down to Florida. So, so it's kind of like we see each other a lot and then go our own ways and then reconnect again. So it's been amazing.
Wow, that's really
gosh.
special that you guys get to do that. So we have a camper,
Mhm.
and when we got ours, her parents did the same thing. They ended up purchasing a camper, and they would come with us every time we go camping, like for the weekend. And
Yeah.
we thought that was awesome and brought the
Yes.
family together. But you guys take it to a whole nother level. That's really neat.
Well, you guys still can. So
That's true. That's true. They'll listen to this and want to go do that.
Yeah, probably.
there you go.
And actually, your mom just got one too.
That's true.
They're waiting on theirs because it's getting built like as we speak, and it's going to be ready in spring. But it came off of us. Like our parents followed what we were doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. That means you have amazing parents, right? Like they're willing
do.
to like do it, and even at like an older age or whatever, willing to try something new and do something different, and like that's amazing. So that's awesome.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, I wish we could do it full time, but he's in the military, and
Mm,
we can't. Like you
Yeah.
can't like travel around when you've got the job to go to and you have to go there. So
yeah.
And that's kind of part of this, why, something we wanted to talk about with you is we get that you always have a choice. So even me saying like, well, I don't really have a choice. I have a job. Well, so does everybody else. You always have the choice. You might not like the choice, but you always have the choice to say, even me, like when my contract's up, I could just walk away, I guess, if I wanted to.
Mhm.
I love my job. I like what I do. So I really don't want to do that.
Mhm.
But what do you say to somebody that, probably 99% of people who dream about doing what you're doing probably say that to themselves? I can't do that right now. And they
Well,
never
I think, yeah, I think it really just depends on like what I kind of call like your why, or it
Mhm.
really depends on what your goal is with your life. Like if you love your job and like you've hit a goal and like that's where you want to be and that's what you want to do, then by all means like do that and like enjoy it. And maybe for you it means when you can retire from the military at some point, maybe earlier than others, maybe that's when you plan it. Like I don't know like what that looks like, but I feel like for people that say my life sucks, it's horrible, I just don't, I want to do what you do, and like, well then do it. Like
Yeah.
there's no reason like not to. And like to say that like we didn't sacrifice a ton of things to get to this point would be lying. Of course we did. Of course we sacrificed a lot. Of course we live in fear. And in the beginning, like the financial aspect of it was like crazy. And like a lot of people couldn't have done what we did because of how we lived, you know, with the lack of a safety net per se. I mean, it sounds like you guys are very similar to us. We have parents, you know, my parents and my husband's parents, we of course always had a safety net, you know, which was very lucky that we had. But in reality, internal to just us, like we didn't have a huge bank account. We barely had anything. And, you know, like, and it was like, but we went for it. So I feel like it's one of those things, if it's something you want to do and your why is freedom, and your why is just wanting to be able to go out and have your time be your time all day long, then figure it out and make it work. And if that's not your goal, and if you're happy with what you're doing, then don't, and then do the weekend trips or the week-long trips, or, you know, whatever that looks like. So I really think that that's the most important thing, is figure out what your why is, and based on that, you can make it happen if you want to.
It's so true. We're always talking about knowing your why. And for us, you know, we it's the homeschooling part as of what we focus on to help encourage people, obviously, because homeschooling, as you were saying, is kind of it can be a leap of faith. But totally about the knowing your why, and then just having that vision and that long-term goal and setting your life up for that.
Well, it's like we brought this up on an episode before, that if you don't know what your why is, if you're just doing it because like especially something that like you're doing, if you just do it on a whim because you think it sounds cool and you don't really have your why, and I hope you can talk about this a little bit more, but when you hit the hard parts, even with just regular homeschooling or whatever it is that you do, that when you hit that hard, that big bump in life, if you don't have that why, you're going to fall apart. And because you have to be able to look a year from the future, a year from now, 5 years from now, why are we doing this? Like it's for our family. And I'm assuming that's probably why you're doing this too, but it's for your family. You spend more time with your family. We realized that homeschooling, when we had our kids in regular school before, and you realize that you get no time with them. We see the school bus now pull up at our neighbor's house, and it's like, what time is it? It's like almost dark, you know, and they haven't seen their kids all day. I don't know. Maybe some people like that, but,
Yes.
but for us, it made us realize like, man, you know, you really didn't see your kids before. And our why is to know that when our kids are grown and it's all said and done, that we spent as much time as we could with them. And we brought our family as close as we could, you know, with the choices that we could make. And yeah, the why is essential. And that goes for anything in life, but especially this, especially with what you're doing. Because can you kind of talk about, because I think everybody that, you know, us too, that thinks about doing that, it always looks, and this goes for everything, not just what you're doing, but it always looks glamorized, right? Like, oh, look where they are now, look where they are today. And that's what Instagram is anyway. It's this glamorized, you know, view of someone's life.
Yeah.
And that's just not you. I don't mean just you guys, but
I hear you.
Yeah. So can you kind of tell us, like, what did you feel when you finally made the choice to sell your house and all your stuff and move into a tin can, which is what we have too. We have one. So as big as you can get a huge one. It's still small with 4 kids and 2 dogs, because we have 3 kids and a dog, and it still gets small.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. So yes, I would say like the why aspect of it is a big part of when we talk to people that want to do this, is understanding what their why is, because it is not all rainbow and sunshine by any means. Like we are still parenting, which is hard no matter where you are or where you're doing it. We're still married and working on our relationship. We're still growing as people. We still have to try to feed our kids healthy food, and we still have to try to, all of those, and work, and, all of that stuff. So I feel like knowing your why is what's going to help you through those things. And yes, this lifestyle looks so overly glamorized when it comes to social media or even blog posts or like whatever. So we try very hard to throw in the mix like some of that reality of it too, because it is like boring at times, obviously. And it's like your truck breaks down on the side of the road, like, oh, that sucks, like now what are we like there's constant things that like just come up with it that is not that gorgeous. Or you get to an RV park and you're parked there and it smells like manure all day, and this is where we are. So yeah, it definitely, there is a whole element to it that is not all amazing. And also even just with the kids, like having space to do projects with them and do things like that. Like I miss like our big house still to this day for that reason, that we had this huge yard that it was like, oh yeah, let's go outside and we'll just like spray shaving cream all over the place. Like, and we could just do that. Well, when you're in an RV park, like, yeah, people are gonna look down on that. Or even like in here, they set up an amazing Lego set, and then it's like, okay, but now we need to take it down because we have to move. Like there's a lot of things like that that bring the challenges into the mix. So yes, I think in anything you're doing, knowing your why, and like even for us when we got like we're planning to get on the road, we were so excited, so much excitement, but so much tears and fear and uncertainty. I remember standing in our kitchen just like bawling my eyes out to my husband, like, I can't leave the house, I can't do it, like I can't turn the keys over, what are we doing, why are we doing this, like. And then getting to the RV park, like for the first, I think like 3 or 4 nights that we were there, when we officially like moved into the RV and got there, and just every night like crying, like, oh my gosh, I left their toys out and they're all rained and they're all ruined because we don't have a garage. And like, oh my gosh, like what's going on here? Like I can't take a bath. I want a bath. Like, oh, so so there's a lot. And I mean, other people you'll talk to and like they never have that and they just get on the road and they're like, whatever. But I think there's a lot of people too that think you like just you're on vacation all the time. It's amazing. And it's like, yes, it's super amazing, but there's also things about it that aren't. So, and yeah, our why is, we always say it as 3 things. It's family, freedom, and travel, like is our why. So those 3 things is why we've built this lifestyle and continue to live this way and continue to pursue it.
Was there like one defining moment? Because I know you had the thoughts leading up to it, but was there like, the thing that was like, okay, we're doing this? Or was it just like you were getting there and you just wanted to go for it?
I wish there was, because like everyone asks that and I'm like, no.
Just led up to it.
We kind of just like, I mean, I think we kind of like joke about like my sister and I were both stay-at-home moms and our husbands were working, and I'm like, well, that's what you get. You guys went to work, you left us home with 6 kids. She has 2 kids before, and I'm like, this is what we came up with. Like, let's do this. So no, there was no major, whatever, that it was just kind of lots of conversations that led to this. And then seeing other people online doing it and be like, well, if they're doing it, I can do it. So like, let's figure this out. Let's do it. So yeah, nothing, no, I wish there was some big story, but.
Well, how long did you guys take to plan it?
I think it was about a year. So it's kind of like we started talking about it, and then like we told people we were going to do it, like extended family and stuff like that. And then I was like, okay, now this is getting real.
Now you got to do
and
it.
And then it was like actually getting the house ready and selling the house and like that whole process, and then getting the rig. And of course, winter in Wisconsin, we're not going to do anything then. So it kind of like all timing wise. So I'd say about a year until we officially said we were going to do it, until we officially were like in the rig and like out the door.
And that, if I've got your timeline right, you guys started when your first one was in kindergarten?
He would be 6. So he was 6 when we started, and then the twins were 4, and then our youngest had just turned 2.
Okay. So then you just, it was the homeschooling journey and everything all together new life.
Yep.
I'm still like in awe how I think it's so neat that both your parents were educators and they were the ones that planted the seed, like you should homeschool.
Yes, totally. And that made me feel more confident in it too, versus them being like, you're not going to do that homeschool thing, right? And then it would have kind of been like, okay, well, I don't know. But yeah, with them, I mean, I don't think when my mom started talking about it that she thought we were going to go as unschooly as we've gone. Mm-hmm. I think she liked the idea of unschooling and radical unschooling, but I think that when actually seen it in action, she was for a while there a little bit like, are you sure about this? And then my dad was definitely too a little bit more like, well, what about that formal stuff? And we're like, Dad, it's fine. Like, so like they definitely hit a point where it's kind of like, this is very, very different than, than what we were originally thinking. But now even to this day, like I'll talk to my dad and he's like, no, it's amazing. Like to see what you guys have done and like how the kids are and what they've learned and, all of that. So they've really come around to, totally appreciate it and be good with it.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, go for it.
I was going to say that once again, it was like, I feel like we kind of took the lead because we decided to homeschool. And now I have 3 of my family members that are all homeschooling. 2 of my sisters, one of them, she still has like the pre-K age, so it's not quite school age, but she's already like on that train of thought. And then my oldest sister started homeschooling this year. And then one of my cousins started homeschooling. So once again, it's, we brought it to the table, but
Mhm.
our family, again, when you have supportive family, it's so helpful because even though it was very foreign to everybody in our family, they were very accepting and very supportive. And like, we know what you guys know what you're doing and we fully support it.
We don't though.
We don't know what we are, right?
Don't tell anyone. None of us do.
That's right.
And they are all educators.
We are.
Her mom was a high school
Professor.
teacher and then a college professor.
Okay. Yeah.
And all of them support it, it's
Mhm.
kind of neat.
Well, it's interesting. I feel like you do hear that more often than not, of that people that are homeschooling have some type of that background to them. Like one of the radical unschoolers I listened to, and her girls are now like fully grown and everything. She was a college professor through the whole time. Like she was doing this with their kids. And so was her husband. And it was like that idea that it's like, it's an interesting, thought. Like, okay, these people that are in this space are going this route.
Mhm.
Okay, like, there's something more to this, but
Sure.
I think that's awesome too that your family's followed. I think a lot of times people just need someone to be the first.
Yeah,
once
right.
someone doing it, then they're like, oh, okay, now it's okay for me to do it. So like, okay, great. Like now or they know they can come to you with questions, which is amazing too.
Yes, exactly. So what does learning on the road look like, especially unschooling? Because I love the whole unschooling philosophy.
Yeah, so the unschooling, it's always one of those things that I say, like, we could talk probably for 10 hours and we still wouldn't really talk about what unschooling is because it's so like unstructured
Right.
and
Mhm.
so like all over the board and like so different. And sure, you can say it's child-led learning. Yeah, it definitely is in some ways. And then in other ways, it's more parent-led introduction, if you want to
Mhm.
call it. Like there's so many different ways to look at it. And I think there's also, as there is with any type of schooling, all different varieties of it. So we unschool, but we actually more so radical unschool, where with radical unschool is where it's you kind of bring it into all aspects of your life. So like we don't really have like a set bedtime for the kids. Like with the food they eat, we try to give them a lot of flexibility. Like we don't have too many limits on like screen time, and like everything is kind of really open to them. So that kind of in turn leads into the philosophy around the learning being like they're learning in everything and anything they're doing. So if they're playing a video game for 3 hours, they're learning more than like I want to accept they're learning in that time that they're playing the video game. So me still learning to learn that they are. But like, so really looking at all of those different things and saying like they're learning in everything they can do. And maybe one of the kids learns the most at midnight. And like that's their time that they really get into a project or really get focused on something, where maybe another one does like early in the morning. And like, who am I to say, okay, everyone goes to bed at this time and everyone gets up at this time? Like, well, no, because like I like to stay up late and sleep in. I don't want to be a morning person. I'm not. So I don't want to have to do that.
Mhm.
So kind of really having that be part of like the whole package of what we do. And so for us on the road, like it's very, people say road schooling, which like I think is definitely again very broad, but definitely what we do, because when we go somewhere, we always learn with where we're at. So we were just at like Crater of the Moon National Park, like this crazy landscape that's so random. So you just go there, and then right now going into visitor centers, we can't do as much as we used to, but you could go into visitor centers and reading the signs or listening to a ranger talk or watching the movie on it. And then you go out and the kids we're doing a hike and they're picking up the crater rocks, like these huge rocks, they're holding them over their head because they're so strong, because the rocks are so light. So talking about that and like just really like having everything we're doing like be part of like what they're learning, and the philosophy that like they're learning all the time, even if we're not formally sitting down to like knock the subject out, like they're just constantly learning.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would think that this type of lifestyle is perfect for that. I can only imagine the amount of geography they're learning, traveling all over the country, and
Yes.
then the history from the different parks,
Mhm.
science, learning about the craters. And I mean, you're able to really immerse, like it's just all intertwined, life and learning, and they're seeing that full, to full scale, I feel like, when you have that type of lifestyle. You
Yeah, and
know,
it actually makes it easier in some ways on us too,
right.
because then we don't have to try to make these situations. We're just in them a lot.
Mhm.
So it
Exactly.
definitely makes it easier, I would say for sure.
Yeah, because I mean, we try to do the same where we immerse them in, different parts of our life and expose them to different areas and the museums and the parks, and we're outdoors a lot. But we do have to like work for it harder to get there, you know, and to work it into the schedules. And but where it's just it's intermixed, which is awesome.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. And it makes it that part of it easy. It makes more of the formal aspect of it sometimes harder to do because we're always moving and going and whatever. So like there's not a lot of sit down. And like there are people on the road who travel like every 3 weeks. So they go and they sit in one spot for 3 weeks or a month, maybe or even longer. And then they definitely have more of like a structure to their routine or their day. Like we have no structure at all.
So no plan, like how long you're going to be at a place or
no. And it's been that way for like, this whole time we've been on the road. Like we've just done it that way. And like, I work well in that space. My husband had a little bit of a struggle getting to that place, but now he's happy in that place. And then for the kids, I feel like for them, like it's all they've known. So do I feel like it's perfect for each one of the kids and the personality? No. Like, do I feel like maybe some of them would do better in maybe a little bit more structure or whatever? Maybe. But then on the other hand, we try to do that and then they hate it. So that it's like, okay, fine, we'll just keep it, kind of free flowing and like open. And like, sometimes we're at a place for 3 days, sometimes we're at a place for 2 weeks, like something. So we just kind of go with it. But that, I guess, to us is also part of the learning of the idea of making them into, or hoping we're making them into people that are very flexible and can easily adapt and change. And I feel like the direction like our world is going in, it's just going to get faster. So like the faster that they're able to adjust and adapt and change on their own without needing a structure or direction, like the better. Or if something's put in front of them, if they can just figure it out on their own and run with it, like great. Like I think that's going to be a skill that not everyone has. So like let's let that flourish and we'll take the inner fear that we're messing our kids up. We're not doing it the way everyone else does and cross our fingers and hope that it'll all be good. But in the end, we know like our family relationship is good and we will all be together. And, if something got forgotten or missed on this whole part, like we'll be there to help them get it when they need it, or, their siblings will, or whatever it may be. So I think they'll be okay. I'm hoping.
That's something we talk about all the time too, homeschooling. It's like, there's always that worry, especially people who came from the public school system. It's always in the back of your mind. I guess I can't speak for everybody, but I think a lot of people, it's always in the back of your mind that you're like, well, are we doing this right? Are we messing them up in any way? Are they going to miss something? Because if only we stuck them in school, everything would be just fine. They'd learn everything they need to know, which we know is not true either. Right. So I think it's just I think that's just like a natural fear. And that's just being a parent too.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I think even people that have their kids in school are saying the same thing. Like, I think it's the same, like across the board. I feel like when you are homeschooling, you've just taken yourself from the bubble or box or whatever, and you're just even a little bit on the outside of it. So like the farther you go with it, like I think there's a little bit extra that gets added in, but in general, just parenting in general, we all just hope they turn out okay, right?
Yes. Well, this came up a while back, but I think somebody else mentioned this, but I think a big part of it is when you homeschool or whatever kind of schooling you want, besides being in public schools, that you finally take the responsibility for it. When before, even if they weren't learning anything at school and it was a complete failure, at least it wasn't your fault, right?
It was my sister who said that.
Your sister, yeah. And that's true. I think it's a mental thing. Like they might be doing horrible in school, but at least it's not your fault. It wasn't your fault as a parent. It was the school's fault. And then when you take full responsibility, which you should anyway, it's just a little bit scarier, right?
Yeah.
But
there's no one else to blame but yourself.
Exactly. Exactly. And a lot of people don't like that.
No, and that's why a lot of people don't do it too. So like I am with you on that one. And I feel like obviously as we're doing this and always have been, that we should take that responsibility, and that all parents should have more responsibility of their kids, school or not. School in its sense can only do so much.
Yep.
You as a parent are responsible for the majority. And I think people look at it the other way. They think school's responsible for the majority. Not everyone, obviously, but that school's responsible for the majority, and they just a little bit, it's like, no, like school's just there as like a supplement to whatever you're doing as a parent. So I agree, but it makes it harder and it makes it more challenging, but it also makes your relationship stronger than with your kids because you're in it together. I think that's the amazing thing.
Absolutely. And I think just because you're working through it together, it they I feel like it helps build their confidence too. Like, okay,
Mhm.
they've got my back. And even if I'm like struggling in this or I don't quite understand this, I know that they're going to be there and help me through it. Like you said, if you find later on down the road that there was something lacking, they have that confidence that you're right there to like help them get through it. And I feel like we've seen that in our kids too, that our daughter, we've mentioned this before, went to a great school, and she lacked a lot of confidence in learning, and that was something we got to work on, and we've already seen in almost 2 years now that it's gone a long way, just that like one-on-one time with our kids. And no matter what way they're learning, I there's definitely that building in their confidence for sure.
Yeah, I hear that a lot from people that'll like just get on the road after their kids have been in school maybe for a couple years or whatever, and just saying like, I can't believe how much my kid has blossomed
Hmm.
from being on the road in this setting. I don't even know if that has to do with on the road, but just being around their parents more, being in a comfortable place where they can learn comfortably, like how
Hmm.
much more they just learn and adapt and like just enjoy it.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to ask, and I think a lot of people wonder the same thing as me. Every time I see somebody like you guys doing some really cool things where you don't stay in one spot, I always have to ask myself, and I tell her this all
He
the time, like,
does.
what do you think they do? Like, what do you think they
For a
do
living.
for a living, like to make money? How do they do that? Because I
Yes.
want to know.
Yes, no, totally. And everyone wants to know. I still want to know when I see people doing it. I'm like, and how are you doing this? What is going on here? And
Exactly.
it's been crazy to see because like I have not met very many people that are doing the same thing. Like
Okay.
everyone is doing something like very different. So that's been interesting. But for our story, so when we started on the road, my husband was working at UW Parkside, so University of Wisconsin Parkside, in their IT department there. And he had just a regular like 9 to 5 job. So when we decided to do this, he actually went into his boss there and asked if he could take his job on the road for about 3 weeks at a time. And then he'd come back, to work for a week and then back on the road for 3 weeks. And no one had done this. Like this was a, university, like people didn't do that there. So they went up and up and up the chain, up all the way up to the chancellor. And then he got it approved to go and try to do this. So we went and did it. And so that was how we initially got on the road, was he was able to take his job on the road with him and, maintain the same salary, health insurance, all that type of stuff. So he did that, but then every 3 weeks he had to be back in Wisconsin. So that got really limiting because we can only go so far. So then he asked, okay, can I go up to being like on 8 weeks and then I come back? And they're like, okay, let me check. And they checked in the office and everyone said, it's so much easier to get a hold of him now when he's on the road than it was when he's in the office. Because when in the office, he'd like go work in the library or he'd go for a walk or whatever. Well, now if somebody was like, answer right away. I'm here. So they're like, okay, that's cool. So we did that, but like we still kind of felt like that the freedom level we wanted wasn't there because he was working like 9 to 5, and depending on, or whatever it was, 8 to 4, depending on what time zone we were in, that was a little different too. So then I'd be out with the kids exploring, and by the time he was done working, it was like, okay, now it's time to kind of come in and do dinner and whatever. And then it was just like exploring on the weekends. We're like, no, we want more than this. Like we don't want like this isn't enough for us. We want more. So when we had started on the road, I had already talked about starting a travel blog, and I'd also started a virtual assistant business. And I was just going to do that kind of for like supplemental income. I'd always, as a stay-at-home mom, done random things to bring in extra money. So I had those businesses, and then we were like, okay, well, Craig, how about you go in and you ask if they'll let you go down to part-time? I think we can manage it. If you go down to part-time, like we'll be good. Go ask. So we went and asked, and they're like, nope, we're drawing the line. You've asked too many times, like can't do that. He's like, okay, fine. So at that point, we gave ourselves 6 months to build my business up to the point that he could stop working and just give his notice and whatever. So at that point, I took my business, which is called Virtual Powerhouse, and was like a virtual assistant business, and really just focused on building that up. So recommendation, if you plan on doing this, don't go to Yellowstone because the internet doesn't work there. And I worked from like midnight till 5 a.m. every night, and then had to get up at like, 8 o'clock with the kids while he was working. And yeah, so anyways,
Oh
so
man.
I did start that business and really focused on that and just built it up to that level so that 6 months after we said that, he was able to go in and say that, at work, like, okay, like I'm going to stop, I'm going to be done working. they're like, well, how about you go part-time? Really? Like, really? But I was like, no, it was great. It worked out amazingly. So then he was able to go part-time for about another 6 months or a year or so while I continued to build the business and while we continued to work on building our blog up and making monetizing that as well. So then, and then after the part-time, he went down to like 10 hours a week and then 5 hours a week. So for like well over a year after that, we had like additional money coming in, which was amazing, and had his health insurance while he was part-time and everything. So that was super helpful. And then once we kind of hit the point where we were full-time entrepreneurs, we had Virtual Powerhouse built up to where that could sustain us. And then also our travel blog, we had built that up and monetized that so that we were able to have both of those business, with the intention being that the blog would become our full-time income and I could stop doing Virtual Powerhouse. Well, a couple of years ago, both of those businesses hit like full-time income status, and it was like, having more money is nice. Let's just keep both of them. And we'll just keep building both of them. So I have built a team at Virtual Powerhouse that now helps me manage all of our clients. And I have an operations manager and team leader and all of that. So I'm not doing as much of the day-to-day work with it, which is great. And then from a blogging perspective, like, yeah, we've just continued to build that and grow that. And then throughout all of this, my husband kind of went the route of, he was going to do web design, and because he's great, a computer science degree, web design, things like that. So he enjoyed doing that part of it, but he learned about himself that he is not an entrepreneur and he does not like entrepreneurship like at all. Like he loves, like had his job, like everyone loved him. He was like the best person to work with and like he was amazing. But got into the entrepreneur thing, he's like, I don't like this. And I'm like, I love this. Like this is like amazing. Like this is great. Like it's challenging. It's great. I love talking to people and convincing people. Like this is amazing. So then we kind of figured out over the years, like, okay, if our marriage is going to work, it's better if you just don't work, because we work very different from each other. So if we're trying to do something together, like it's not really working too well here. So how about we decide I'll do that, and then you do more of the, like, obviously taking care of the rig, taking care of the kids with like the cooking and like cleaning and stuff like that, and also doing more of the homeschooling stuff. So he kind of took over a lot of that while I continue to do the working. But the goal has always been for me to only work like 20 hours a week. So by only working 20 hours a week, then I'm still able to obviously be part of all of that as well. So long story, but that's how we got from there to here and where we're at now.
That's an awesome story.
It
Like
is.
you've, I mean, you literally built your, like engineered your life
Mhm.
out of the 9 to 5, you know, that's really cool.
Yeah, and when I look back now, like I'll look back and I'll be like, how did we do that? I'm like, how are we literally able to leave like this secure job he had and this like retirement fund and this health insurance? Like, yeah, but now of course I'm like, but we're here. Like that's this, like it's amazing. Like I'm so happy and thankful for where we're at and willing to continue to work for it and whatever, because now I couldn't imagine having to be on someone else's schedule and get up when someone else told me to go to bed. And I don't want that. I like it this way.
Well, you followed your why. You saw that vision and you didn't stop. It's, if you work at it, a lot's possible.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I will say, like, I am by no means someone who is that organized in my thoughts. So yes, thank you for saying that, but it was not that. It sounded very pretty the way you said it. Very intentional. It was not that intentional and pretty, but from an overhead, like, yes, that was the goal, and it all pieced together one way or another.
Yeah.
I think that's most people's stories when they accomplish something. It's like you said, you end up looking back and then realizing how it all made sense. But along the way, it was just a jumble of different things, and it really wasn't planned, but exactly how it happened. But you know, that's how life is, right? Life's funny. It works out sometimes for some people. You don't know how.
Yeah, no, exactly. And one of the things, like, I'll tell people who are like interested in starting their own business or whatever, I feel like a big thing was like my ducks were never and are never all in a row. Like they just aren't. Like it's always, but it's still like you have to move forward. And I never know the answer, but I keep moving forward until I get to the answer. So like that idea of like just always one foot in front of the other. So like there were times I would sit at the table like bawling my eyes out, like I've got to figure out how to do this for my client, and I have no idea how to do this, and I don't know what I'm doing, and knowing like I would get past it, but like I got past it. Where I think a lot of people like hit a point like that, and then like they go back and like they just sit in it. And it was like, no, like I knew I couldn't do that. Like I had to just keep moving forward. And I think that's been the biggest thing I like to tell people is one foot in front of the other. And like don't let your business name like stop you from getting your first client. Name your business. Like my business started as like BriannaRoyal.com. Like that was my business name. It was like, and I went and got clients. And then after that, it was like, okay, now I want to really come up with a name. As I already had clients and I was making money and I was doing my business, then I did that. So it's like, or like, did I have a beautiful website when I started? No. I don't think half my clients have ever been to my website, so it doesn't really matter. It's like all of those little things. It's like just keep moving forward and like you'll figure it out, but you got to move forward.
I think it's awesome because even something as simple as this, what we do with a podcast, you realize how many people start a podcast, and it's hard because you're not going to get everybody that you ask to come on. There's going to be people who ignore you or say no. And we realized how easy it would be to be like, this isn't going to work out for us, and we had to say the same thing like you just said to ourselves, like, who cares? They said no, or they didn't respond to us. And that goes with anything, like with what you guys are doing. Like you guys, you're putting it all on the line for it. So like you saying that to yourself is so important. It goes with just anything you do in life is just, you got to keep putting one foot in front of the other and keep pushing forward and not giving up. I think that's just such a cool story that, and I think it's really cool too, that your husband's honest with himself, because a big push right now is be an entrepreneur. Well, it's not for everybody. It really isn't, like, cause it's a whole different ball game. And I think it's really neat too that, and I'm sure at the time it wasn't too easy for you. Maybe it was, but for him to walk away from a job with the university, because we know that's a really good job. With, like you said, with the benefits and the retirement, I think that's where a lot of people probably, they hit a roadblock when doing something like this. Is like, I just can't leave that. I don't like, maybe they don't even like it, but they just can't walk away from the stability.
Yeah, no, and that's exactly it. And I think it is that stability that stops so many people from doing it. And that's where, like, I'm like, don't come to me and tell me you can't do this. Like, you can do it if you want to, but you're choosing something else over it. And that's totally fine.
Yes.
But just admit to yourself, you're choosing the stability over it. And like, that's great. And maybe your life works better for that. And believe me, there's been times when both me and Craig, my husband, have been like, yeah, maybe that stability would have been nice. So it's not like we don't go back to that same place and like say the same thing. So like, I get it. Like, and this isn't for everyone, but it is that idea that like, yes, we have both, me and him have grown more as people than we ever would have imagined we would have from doing this lifestyle. Like that was like an eye opener too. It was like, well, yeah, we're going to go spend more time with our kids and we're going to make their life amazing. And we're going to have family time and we're going to have this freedom. And, oh, but we're also going to have to grow as people. Like a ton and like push boundaries and learn things about ourselves and about our relationship and whatever, because when you're together 24/7, like there's no room for an elephant in this rig. So there is no, that it's always out. Like everything is out and in the open because he can't go hide in his garage because we don't have one. So
work on the yard or the property. Or
he's like, I'm going to go cut the grass. I'm like, oh, no, you're not, because we don't have a lawnmower. Like you can't.
We don't do that. We don't do that. Guys don't do that.
I know. He used to love to cut that grass. I know. He does tell me he misses that sometimes still. But yeah, so all of those type of things, like it is definitely, but a lot of people don't want to face those things. Like they don't want to be put into a situation where they have to deal with that stuff. So they'd rather just stay with what they have, even if they hate it. Maybe they don't, but they think they do because it's comfortable and safe and you can hide from things and be stable and, whatever it might be. So yeah, but again, it's what feels right to you, and our why is that strong. And we're hoping our why is then showing to our kids that as well, and showing to our kids our perseverance and our ability to stay with this, figure things out. They see me and my husband, fight all the time. I mean, I know you guys never fight, but
yeah, no.
They see that all the time, but they see us work through it. And like, they see him going through working to not working, but also understanding like that he supports me a ton. Like he's still like my IT guy, which is amazing. So, and that idea how it all like pieces and works together in just, I would almost say like a messy picture.
So on that note, what are the changes you have noticed in your kids from this lifestyle?
Well, I would say it's hard to say changes just because they were so young when we started.
Mhm.
I would say my hope is, and what I think is because of this, is that their ability to adapt to
Mhm.
things is like crazy. Like we'll just put them in a situation and it's like, yeah, we can do this. Like we got it. Like it's no big deal. Like so that their fear of things isn't as big in a lot of ways. And then I also think just their ability to figure out their relationships with each other. Like they're fighting and then they're figuring out because as you know, having kids home all day, like they're together all day long. They don't get to go to school and have a break and become whatever. So I think them learning how to interact with each other, but then also seeing that their friendships are so deep and so real because they're together all the time and they don't have this influence of these outside friends that are telling them like it's not cool to be friends with your little brother. Like it's not cool to like do that or like so like that idea that they're just very like raw and real like people because they haven't had something telling them they can't be that way.
Yeah.
And we'll see it too like when we go to campgrounds and like meet up with either just weekend kids or other kids that have just got on the road and like our kids are just like tend to lead the group because they're just so like well, yeah, let's go. Let's do this. Like, we
Yeah.
don't need someone to tell us what to do. Like, we got this. Like, let's go figure it out. Let's do it. Like, here, come here, check this out. And it's just like a
Mhm.
constant, like, moving thing. So, again, like, it's hard for me to say just because this is all they've known and all they've done. But, like, my hope is that that's what they're getting out of it. And we actually had our Karsten and Malia, our oldest son, and then one of the twins sign up for a class. And it was a Zoom class that they were going to do. And, like, we're like, all right, guys, like, you're going to do this class. So, like, we sat down, we're like, here you go, like push the button. We're like, all right, you're ready. And like we walked out of the room. And then I hear the teacher saying, well, I know a lot of you have done Zoom classes and you're used to this. I'm like, oh, we haven't practiced like Zoom with our kids. Like, I don't know. They've never done a Zoom class before. Like, I don't know. But then like they've been in the class now for weeks and like it's been fine. And like, they tell us we come in the room, like, get out, leave me alone. I'm like, okay. But like just an example of something that like we didn't have to formally sit down and say, okay, you push this button to do this
Yeah.
and you do this. Like they just figured it out, and then like that I feel is a skill that can't necessarily be taught in a school setting.
Mm-mm.
I don't ever want to bash schools because I know we need them and there's good things about them, but in a school setting that's very hard to replicate, where in this lifestyle it's easy to do. And I really think that that's going to be a big thing that they walk away with.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm reading a book by Peter Gray, and there's a part in there where there's this it was over in India, but they did this experiment where they took this computer and put it into this town where these kids didn't have technology, and they just let them be. And within a short period of time, they had figured out how to use the computer all by themselves. And the point is, like you're saying, like kids will figure it out, and that's how they learn. And sometimes it's better to just walk away and let them do their thing, and you'll be really amazed what they can accomplish. So it's kind of
giving them that space, like it's giving them space, and having to be like even in that class, like, well, it might look bad upon us if they don't know how to use Zoom, but oh well, like it's fine, they'll figure it out, no big deal. So, but it's giving them that space to be able to try and fail and try again and whatever. Which again, when you're homeschooling, like you can do that all day long, which is an amazing thing.
Yeah. So to take a step back a little bit, you've mentioned a couple of things, that you have to, where you have to kind of be uncomfortable and get used to that and grow as a person. So what are some of the like silly or ridiculous things that you've had to like deal with being on the road in a camper? And we know, because we have a camper, all the silly things that can happen with a camper and towing a camper and being in a very confined
tiny living
space. We just do it for a weekend. I can't. So you go ahead and tell us a few of those things.
Yeah. I would say with that, like the space is just the biggest thing. Like it's like, I'm sure you guys have heard the doors open and slam shut while we've been talking and like whatever. Like it's like there is nowhere to go where it's like just quiet and you're just sitting there and enjoying it. Like I do miss my big jacuzzi bathtub we had in our house. Like there is none of that type of stuff. So I feel like that in itself is the biggest thing. And the idea that, like, of course, if you look on my Instagram, my rig is gorgeously clean. Someone actually commented, someone commented like, how do you keep it clean? Do your kids do a lot of chores? And I wrote back, I'm like, it never looks like this. I'm like, this is just for the picture. Like if you're gonna post a picture of your house, like you clean it. Like that's what this is. Like, so I think it's that idea that like I have to be okay with like not having like what would you call it? Like the Instagram worthy house or whatever. Like I don't have the perfect setup. We don't have like all the things in the right place. Like we don't have, and just accepting that like it's okay that there's stuff all over the place, because that's the only way we're all going to be, comfortable and be able to enjoy this. So I think it's been a lot for me of just having to let go of like a lot of that type of stuff and just be okay with it. And then to like, I guess this is funny and embarrassing and whatever you want to call it, but I like to just keep it real. So like people will ask us like, well, how often do your kids shower? I'm like, well, like, I don't know. We don't really like keep track of that. Like everyone, if they start smelling or like their feet are really dirty, we'll be like, you gotta get in the shower, and they like don't want to go. We're like, you gotta get in the shower. So,
I
so
assume even more so when like you're boondocking.
yes, the boondocking, especially, then we just tell the kids like you're not showering. So like if you get dirty, like we're gonna take you outside and hose you down. It's gonna be cold, and like we just deal with it, like But so I think like some of that type of stuff, it's like just like our kids are like kind of dirty because they're out running around all day, and like I'm okay. People are like, well, do you wash your sheets like once a week? I'm like, wash my sheets once a week? I'm like, no. So it's like that type of stuff that it's like it's okay. Like it's those things that you just have to kind of be like okay with, and like it's funny and like haha. And of course there's people on the road that wash their sheets once a week and their kids take a bath every night, and that's great, and that's, you can do that if you want to, but we just feel like it again just adds more into our element of like the chaos and the craziness and the unstructure and the just like enjoying life, because you don't have to be clean all the time. It's
Sure.
So it's not like glamping every day. That's what
no. Oh, people walk in, they're like, oh, I'll take my shoes off. I'm like, you do not need to take your shoes off. It's okay. Especially now, we don't have our dogs anymore. They both unfortunately passed away, but especially when we had them, it was like, why would you take your shoes off? Like our dogs are in here, like, like it's fine. So a lot of that type of stuff. But of course, other than that, all the regular things are, the black tank and the gray tank, and like, there's stories around that. And like, yeah, my husband had the toilet blow up in his face, and like, yeah, there's always those type of things that just come with the lifestyle, and we're doing it for a long time. So now to us, they almost just become like, it's just what happens. Like, it's not even a big deal anymore.
Yeah.
See?
Yeah.
See?
Yeah, it's tough when you go, like when we go to our camper and you realize that there's always going to be something wrong.
Yes.
Constantly.
Yes.
And if you're going to own a camper, unless you have a ton of money to pay somebody $200 an hour to come out to your camper, you better learn how to fix some stuff yourself.
Yes.
So, and I kind of do that. I do that stuff anyway,
Mm-hmm.
but it can get frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's before we had you on, I was like, man, I wonder how many times it's like part of your day where you're just constantly fixing stuff. I mean, have you guys been on the side of the road? Just,
Mm-hmm.
You have, yeah. I figured that.
More than once we have. Yeah, so my husband, the same thing. So of course, like the rig we're in now is new. So you're like, oh, warranty. Oh, takes forever to get in and to get that stuff done. And then they want to take our house, and we're like, well, we sleep in it. You can have it for like 2 hours, but we need it back. Like, we need it like 2 weeks. We're like, no. So that's all led to him doing the same thing and kind of learning to fix things. So I think there's two things to that. One, yes, there's always something to fix. And two, things are just always going to be broken, and you just accept it. Like, it's okay. Like, it's okay. If that door doesn't quite close, like, it's okay.
You're making me feel so much better right now.
He needed to hear this because ours is just part-time, and he like will stress over it. I'm like, let's just roll with it. We'll make it to how we like it.
Yes.
One of our, right. We had to hang, you know how Wisconsin was, but in the winter, these parks, we keep ours at a park for the first time this year. We usually trail it at all different places, but for the first time this year, we put it at a lake.
Mm-hmm.
And right before we wrapped it up for the winter, because they don't stay open all year up here, one of our slide out motors had an issue. So we put it away, knowing that when we go back next year, I'm right back into it, having to fix something. And it can be very frustrating, but that's how camping is.
It is.
And you're right. Sometimes you're like, you don't need paneling on the wall there. It's okay that you can see the wood behind the wall. Who cares? You know?
You just put a poster up. Just put a poster right there. Like,
I like it. It's a great idea. Just cover the hole up.
Exactly. It'll be totally fine. You'll be the only one that knows what's going on there. So it's all good. Well, we went down to Baja, Mexico. Was it 3 winters ago? And we got down there, and we were down there like halfway down the whole peninsula, and our fridge stopped working.
Oh yeah, I had that too.
Yeah, so there's nowhere in Baja to get your fridge fixed. Like they're like, well, what we could do is we can take your fridge out, we can turn it upside down, we can shake it, we can turn it back over and put it back in, and it might work. Okay, yeah, we could do that. We could do that. And this was like again a new trailer and whatever. So we were like, I think it'll be okay. So we went 2 months without a fridge.
Wow.
Just
We
cooler?
weren't gonna leave Baja. We weren't gonna get that up. We're like, we'll figure it out. So we got a cooler, and every day Craig would walk down to like the local place and get a bag of ice and fill the cooler. And then we went out to eat and like, whatever. And like, we just made it work. So, and then we were going down one of the crazy roads there, and our wall cracked. We're like, that could be a problem. We'll fix it when we get back home. It's fine. So we just left it like that for a while, just kept an eye on it. Then when we got back, we got it fixed. It was all good. They're like, did you park crooked? We're like, no. I don't know what happened. And I'm on hold, and the thing on the place's on hold thing was like, we have tested our rigs to the highest standards. We have gone over bumps, and we have gone over whatever. I'm like, oh yeah, I tested it too. So all of that, I think it is. And again, that's a part of a growth thing of just rolling with it. Like, who cares? It doesn't need to be perfect. We're doing this to enjoy it. So let's just enjoy it. And
Nice.
really, and we try to surround ourselves with people that are the same way, just because then we're all in the same boat. Everyone's kind of like, it's good.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm assuming too that's part of, and we've done it ourselves, but not to the scale you guys are. But the more you simplify your life, the less the little things probably bug you, right?
Yeah, exactly. And you just kind of learn like not to let them bug you, because why let that like weigh you down? Like just there could potentially be big things, or who knows? So like let's just enjoy what we have now, and those little things will go away.
That's what I'm always trying to tell him. I'm like, I know, well, and I know it's worse for him because he's the one fixing it, really.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, what can I hand you? Like,
Uh-huh.
I'll take care of the kids. And you
Yep.
got that? But I get that. But I do try to remind him, like, big scale here. Like, why are we doing this? For our lifestyle, what we want for our family. And even like as weekenders, our kids have grown so much from that lifestyle, and introducing that to their life. I've just fallen in love with it. Like, we grew up tent camping, both of us. We did it even during, because we're college sweethearts, not high school.
Okay.
But so we've been together for a long time, and we did the tent camping and the primitive camping. We loved it. And actually, it's funny that you mentioned the dog thing, because I think it was 2 things that pushed us to get the camper instead of doing tent camping. And that was our German Shepherd and having kids that were like still, infant, and putting them in a tent. I was like, I still want to go camping. How can we do this with the German Shepherd that doesn't get along with other people, and a baby, where are we going to put him, especially in Florida with the mosquitoes and the heat. So yeah, I got off track, but bottom line is, like, we love it. And I try to remind him, like, these are little things, not, and there hasn't been anything yet that we haven't been able to figure out. And I think it's
Yeah.
totally worth it.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Like the majority of the things you'll figure out one way or another. And what that may mean is, it may mean we've lost a lot of money because we sold a rig we shouldn't have bought. And like, you know what? Oh well, like, we chose to do it this way, and we're choosing, like, we're giving money up to continue to do it this way. And like, we have to kind of accept that we're okay with that. And don't let me paint this picture like we're just all hunky-dory about everything. My husband gets upset about things, and he wants to fix, and I'm like, it's fine. And then I get upset, and he's like, no, it's fine. It's definitely, we're still growing in it and whatever, but really trying to be in that place where we can just roll with as much as we can roll with. So
No, that's good to hear, because a lot of people won't admit that. Like you're pulling the curtain back from the Instagram
yeah.
community where everything's just so perfect, which we talk about that all the time. Like, if somebody's claiming that everything's perfect, they're lying. They're liars.
Exactly.
So it's nice to hear that, because we know that that's how it is. And when people think about doing this, they should know that it's not all going to be perfect. You're going to get upset. Things are going to break. The truck is going to break down on the side of the road. The camper is going to have a crack. What did you say? A crack in the side of it?
In the wall, the whole wall was like cracking. Yeah.
Or even your story. I watched one of your videos, and it was like, I think your first trip with your rig and you were going through like the
Oh.
one-way mountain passage and you guys were like, you had to cross a bridge even though you were over the weight limit. Like, how
Yes.
stressful is that?
Oh yeah, believe me, when I said to him, just floor it. So he floored it. We would have crossed the bridge. And as we're driving, looking over the cliff, I'm like, I just want to have a glass of wine sitting by my fireplace in my big comfy chair in my house I no longer have.
Yeah. And we've had moments with that when we were
Oh,
pulling
yeah.
our trailer. We were like, how do we get out of this? Like,
Yeah.
we can't.
Yeah,
the
I mean,
thing
we're
is,
gonna have
always-
to, but
You always figure it out is like what it comes down to. It's like even we've been on the side of the road and like had to make phone calls for like 2 hours straight to find someone to come out. Eventually you figure it out and it gets
Mhm.
fixed. And like, and you know what? And the good thing about when you have like a rig, like it's like, you know what? If we had to just leave it on the side of the road and go drive somewhere, like, oh well, we go do that and then we come back the next day or the day after, or, you know, like whatever. Like it would be hard and we won't want to have to do it, but it's like we figured out in all those situations, like there's always a way to get past it, and that's just what we've had to do. So yeah, he definitely figured that out.
yeah. No, that's and we find too that, and I guess me personally, but we get stressed about it. Just like you said, it's not like you don't get stressed or you don't worry about it, but every time after you figure it out, you feel a little bit better about yourself because you realize that you got through something that was a pain and stressful, and then you grew as a person. And every time you feel like, oh, next time this is gonna be so easy. Next time this happens.
Yeah, exactly. Even if it's not easy next time, at least you know you can get through it.
Mhm.
Right.
So it's like that whole thing of like just knowing like, yeah, we can do this. Like we can get by it. And again, like, and that to us is an important thing to show our kids, which is funny. Like when we break down, our kids are just like, all right. Like they just sit there. They're like, okay, well, let us know what we're doing now. You know, or like they'll be somewhere like, why are we still here? We're like, guys, like we can't drive the truck right now. They're like, oh, okay, great. All right, awesome. Like it's just which is good. Like we want to instill that in them. Don't be stressed out. Like don't be
Yes.
worried. Like don't be whatever. Like we'll figure it out. Like we got it. It's okay. We'll get through it.
Awesome. Yeah, it's the good lessons.
Mhm.
We kind of skipped over this, but I really wanted to ask, like, what are some of the some of your favorite places you guys have been?
Yeah, people ask, and that's so hard to answer just because we've been to so many amazing places. But we do have a list that we always say. So we really like the Destin, Florida area, like that Panhandle.
Okay.
And Destin, Florida, like we've always been in the non-busy season. We actually quarantined there in a vacation rental that we rented with my parents and my sister at the time. Amazing. We walked to the beach and like no one was there, but we love that area. We love just the color of the water and everything. We love the Florida Keys. Like I would just spend all winter there if I could at some point, like would definitely do that. It's really, really expensive, but we love it down in the Florida Keys. And then we also love Glacier National Park. That is our favorite national park in the whole country. So really love it. And really Montana in general is just amazing and gorgeous. And then of course, Utah, like if you're traveling like Utah, like is just like the variety of the different landscapes you see. And I mean, it's like unreal. The first time we went there, you were just like, like holy cow. So that part of it, and then of course Baja, Mexico was just an awesome experience, and we really want to get back there as soon as we can because it was just amazing, like being down there and just the culture and the people and like
Yeah.
just being like on the beach and like just like living that kind of really slower lifestyle. We barely spent any money. Like it was like just amazing. So those are our top places we normally mention.
Have you been to New Mexico?
We have been to New Mexico. We did Carlsbad Caverns and we did the sand dunes there. And then we did Balloon Fiesta in Albuquerque one year as well. So,
Nice. I only asked because we used to live out there.
Yeah.
oh, okay. And what part of it?
We lived in Taos,
Oh, okay. Yeah, I
Well,
have not.
not in Taos, but outside of Taos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I
and
have
then,
not heard of. We haven't been there, but I've heard it's gorgeous there.
It is.
It is, yeah.
Mhm.
And then Clovis, which you might have come through if you came through Texas. It's like in the grasslands area.
Okay.
We're
Okay.
on the
Yeah, my
borders.
husband's usually driving and I'm working, so people will be like, "Oh yeah, when you drove by," I'm like, "What?" I'm like, I was working. I always tell them like, "Remember to tell me to look if you drive by something."
But the Carlsbad Caverns, those are pretty awesome.
Yeah, we were able to go and actually sit when they had the bats come out, whatever
Yeah.
time of year that is. So that was amazing to sit there. And I think there was like 1 million, they said, bats or whatever. They like some crazy number and just sit there and just watch these things come out, like was amazing. So
Yeah, if people don't know, they're listening, they have like stadium seating, right? and then you sit there like in these seats and watch as the bats come out at night to go feed out of these massive caverns. It's pretty awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, and you have to sit completely still and no phones at all. They make you turn them off, and you have to be quiet, and you have to. So it's one of those things that I'm like, as a content creator, I'm like, I want to show people this, but I can respect the fact that like, let's not show people, and you have to come and see it yourself. But like, it was a really cool experience.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think that was it. Just any last minute advice for families that are considering road schooling, or even a word of encouragement for those that dream of doing it, which I feel like you hit on the encouragement part, for maybe one last of advice for the road schoolers.
I think the best advice is just to do it. And if you go and you do it and you don't like it, you can go back to your old life, but you can't get this time back with your kids. So go for it now. And if you like it, continue to do it. If you don't, then go back to your old life, and it's all good.
Awesome. Well, we know you guys are trying to hit the road, so we're going to get you out of here, but can you tell us where people can find you?
You can find us at Crazy Family Adventure everywhere. So we have our blog at crazyfamilyadventure.com. So if you are interested in learning more about this lifestyle, we have tons of posts out there about RV living, about picking the right RV for your family, just a ton of different RVing content out there. We also have content out there about things to do in locations, like all the ones I mentioned we really like, a bunch of content on each of those locations, and a bunch of different ones around the country as well. And then, the Instagram at Crazy Family Adventure, and Facebook if you want to follow along kind of more in our daily what we're doing. And then we're on YouTube, that we're consistent and we're not consistent, and whatever that is. We have a podcast about full-time RVing with kids that we're consistent and we're not. So right now we're not. And then we also have like Twitter, and my daughter's trying to get me to do TikTok, and we're messing around. But it's just Crazy Family Adventure anywhere. If you go look for us, I think you'll find us. So.
All right. Well, you're heading down to Texas, you said, right?
We'll be heading down to Texas over the next week here. So we'll be making our way down there.
All right. We'll be
Awesome.
following you guys online. So have safe travels, and thank you again for joining us. We appreciate it. It was awesome.
Awesome. I appreciate it too. Thank you for having me.
All right.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.